your cell phones to silent or vibrate. And then let's please all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chris. Would you go ahead and take the roll, please?
Councilmember Stevens?
Here.
Councilmember Strebe? Councilmember Berg?
Here.
Councilmember Dalby?
Here.
Councilmember Rowe?
Here.
Mayor Lazio?
Here.
Approval of items on the consent agenda. Minutes from regular meeting number 16 on May 21st, 2019 as presented. Approve the promotion of Devin Yeager to Sergeant in the Police Department effective July 6, 2019. Approve the promotion of Kyle Durande to Sergeant in the Police Department effective July 7th, 2019. Civil Service Commission eligibility list of May 24th, 2019. Police Officer entrance, Engineering Assistant 1, entrance and promotional. Approve the repair of the spare flight pump at the Elm Street Pump Station for the quoted price of $19,990.70 from Electric Pump Company of Des Moines, Iowa. Purchase rock and sand products for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Resolution number 121, 2019, approving the Wapello County City of Ottumwa Law Enforcement Center maintenance budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2020. Resolution number 122, 2019, authorizing the budgeted transfers as authorized in the fiscal year 2020 budget. Resolution number 123, 2019, approving the purchase of a new 2019 Dodge Braun minivan for the Ottumwa Transit Department. Resolution number 125, 2019, authorizing payment for renewal of the City Workers' Compensation Insurance in Chapter 411 Administrative Agreement for July 1, 2019 until June 30, 2020, in the amount of $112,189 in payment to Iowa Municipalities Workers' Compensation Association. Resolution number 129, 2019, opposing the base rate increase proposed by Alliant Energy. Resolution number 133, 2019, approve the purchase of a 2019 Ford Ranger 4x4 extended cab pickup truck for the Water Pollution Control Facility from Stivers Ford of Waukee, Iowa, for $26,105. Cigarette permit applications for the following: Elliott Oil Company, Albia Road, BP at 1340 Albia Road, North Court BP at 1301 North Court Street, Pennsylvania and Jefferson BP at 1147 North Jefferson, Richmond and Ferry BP at 720 Richmond Avenue, West 2nd BP at 1049 West 2nd, Casey's General Stores, number 7 at 1001 East Main, number 1678 at 346 Richmond Avenue, number 2208 at 1603 West 2nd, number 1886 at 504 West Mary Street, Fairway Stores, number 648 at 1325 Albia Road, Hy-Vee Food Store, number 1 at 1025 North Quincy Avenue, Hy-Vee Gas, number 1 at 1027 North Quincy Avenue, Hy-Vee Food Store, number 2 at 2453 North Court, Hy-Vee C-Store, number 2 at 2457 North Court, Hy-Vee Drug Store at 1140 North Jefferson, Mad Avenue Quick Shop at 405 South Madison Avenue, Murphy Oil USA Incorporated at 1939 Venture Drive, Ottumwa Grocery LLC at 129 East 2nd Street, Smokin' Hot LLC at 2604 North Court Suite A, Smokin' Joe's Tobacco and Liquor Outlet, number 5 at 1115 Albia Road, Walmart, number 1285 at 1940 Venture Drive, Walgreens, number 1301 at 327 West 4th Street, Dollar General at 721 North Quincy Avenue, Dollar General at 921 East Main Street, Yesway Stores, number 1012 at 2508 North Court Street, Yesway Store, number 1013 at 534 Church Street, Yesway, number 1014 at 502 West 2nd Street, and Yesway, number 1030 at 1317 East Mary Street, Fine Liquor and Tobacco at 821 B Albia Road, Iowa Liquor and Tobacco at 1021 East Main Street, Stop and Go Drive-Thru at 516 South Madison Avenue. Beer and/or liquor applications for the following: Champion Bowl LLC at 2601 Romer Avenue with outdoor service area, the Owl's Nest LLC at 116 South Court, Applebee's at 1303 Vaughn Drive, all applications pending final inspections.
Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Move the recommendation as presented, Your Honor.
Second.
Yeah, Holly. Okay. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's carried. I need a motion for the approval of the rest of the agenda tonight. Is there such a motion?
Move to approve, Your Honor.
Second.
Thank you, Skip. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Reports from city officers, boards, commissions, and committees. I'd like to call on City Administrator Andy Morris and have him talk about the solar panel project.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Michael Haley has been working with the city for the past couple of months on the solar panel feasibility study. That was an item that we introduced to Council, as I recall, fairly early 2018. Michael's company, Ideal Energy, has done a great deal of work for us. And as you may recall, one of the items that we took into consideration in choosing Ideal Energy, trying to debate the merits and demerits of whether or not we would want to have solar panels. The fact that they did an independent study and weren't selling a product, that was something of interest to us, and Council obviously approved that contract. Michael is with us tonight. There are a couple of areas he's going to address, and then certainly there are probably some additional items. In addition to that, Council can take questions. I'm sure he will field them. Council may recall from some of the discussions, one of the components we'll talk about is battery storage versus panels, and we'll talk about the two facilities, one being the beach at Ottumwa, the other being the Bridgeview Center, and the other one relates to the purchasing of them, whether the city would purchase these outright or whether we would seek investor financing, and some of the credits are associated with it. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it over to you and you can introduce Michael.
Good evening, Michael. It's nice to have you here. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michael Halley. I work for Ideal Energy in Fairfield. I'm also in my 10th year of the City Council in Fairfield, so I'm going to speak your language, which is short, sweet, and to the point, and not delve into too many details tonight. In 2018, City of Ottumwa chose Ideal Energy to complete an engineering study for the Bridgeview Center to assess the feasibility of solar and/or battery energy storage for the facility. We took a little longer to do that than expected because we needed to gather some data from the building. Installed some CT monitors last summer and have been collecting data since then. And we've used that data and produced 2 reports for the Bridgeview Center. I'm only going to touch upon the feasibility of the financial aspect of it and not get into too much detail otherwise. And then as a third, essentially add-on, we decided to take a look at the beach just across the street and found a pretty good project over there as well. So to get started, the first project, if you just go to page 2 here, is the feasibility for a solar and battery energy storage at the Bridgeview Center. Now, this is modeled as a direct purchase by the city, which is just the simplest way to model this payback. That's not your only option at this point, but we're going to start with that. This would have about a 17-year payback and about a 4.4% internal rate of return. So kind of a modest rate of return on a kind of project like this. Again, now we're using a 2.5 or 2.5% rate increase per year calculator for Alliance rates, which is historically on the low side. They're closer to 3.5%, but we've always tried to come in a conservative figure. As you know, and I heard something in your consent agenda, you know they're proposing a 24% rate increase. This payback could be half that length, and your ROI could double if they get even close to that 24%. So we did not model this with that in mind. Again, this is just modeled after the historical rate increase over time. But this project is the least attractive of the 3 that we looked at. We have begun the process of looking for investors who would then come in and purchase this and enter in what's called a power purchase agreement with the city. The upside to that is there's no upfront cost typically to you. The downside is your savings are less over the period of the agreement. So what that means is an investor would come in and own the array for say 10 years, sell you the power at just a slight discount to what you're right now paying to Alliance. So maybe even 1 cent per kilowatt hour lower. So not a whole lot of savings. But after that 10-year period, when they've recouped their investment, they may then donate the system, and the system can last over 30 years. It's warranted for 25 years, but there are modules that are 40 plus years old that are still producing electricity at a slightly less efficient rate, but they're still producing electricity. There's no moving parts in a solar module. And so then the savings would be realized more at the end of the PPA. But that was one of the deliverables from the engineering study that you paid us to do. So we're investigating that, but not every project will be enticing to investors. And I just want to set the expectations at a realistic level that not every solar project will entice an investor to form a PPA. You can read about some here in the state. I know there's a church near Des Moines that found an investor and it worked for them. A lot of it depends on how you use energy and how you pay for the energy you use. And without getting into too much detail, the Bridgeview uses energy very erratically, not in any sort of steady way like a business, like a manufacturer. It uses large amounts in little time periods. So you have a big event and a large amount of energy is used, usually in the evening. The solar can't do much for that. And that's the energy you pay the most money for. And so that's why we looked at the battery. So if you go to the next one, we did look at just a battery system. This is kind of a little different thinking here in Iowa. And a lot of people haven't considered this. It's been something that's caught on in other countries and on the coast here in the US. But when you store the energy when the energy costs are low and discharge it when the energy costs are high, you are avoiding paying for the most expensive grid powered energy. So it's a buy low, buy it when it's cheap, use it instead of expensive energy. This one actually got a little bit better return, 13.4 years. Again, that's conservative. And then about a 6% rate of return. So that's usually good enough for cities. I know the city of Fairfield moved on 3 projects that had about that rate of return. And solar is considered a safe investment because you're going to need electricity for the foreseeable future. So buying an energy system is typically a safe investment. The third that we looked at, and this was just kind of an add-on, it's like, well, let's look at the beach. So the beach at Ottumwa had a couple of different meters. One was similar to the Bridgeview meter. It paid what's called demand charges, and it's just a complicated type of way to calculate how you would pay for energy. We looked at the other meter, the one that powers the pool. So really, if you look at its energy use, it's nominal throughout the year, and then it spikes in the summer. Well, fortunately, you can bank your credits with the company. You can produce more electricity than you use. You can bank credits that are redeemable when you need electricity. And Alliant Energy is forced to do that by the Iowa Utility Board. So in this case, you can put up a solar array on top of the indoor pool facility, and here you're getting about a 12-year payback and over 7% rate of return. So of the 3, this was the most attractive. We just threw this in as kind of a bonus. In terms of what we're doing now is we're trying to find investors who are interested in these projects. One way to make the Bridgeview project more attractive was to add this in and make it a combined project. So that's what we're showing the investors. We're showing them the Bridgeview project with this beach project because combined, it's going to get them a better rate of return. I'm going to, again, keep this very, very simple, but the reason that investors can take advantage of this in a way that the city can't is that there are tax credits available that pay for a portion of these projects. So currently this year, it's 30% of a solar project can be paid for through tax credits for your federal income tax and 15% for the state of Iowa. So that's 45% of the project covered in tax relief. Cities, as nonprofits, don't pay taxes, can't use the credits. Businesses that can also use depreciation can depreciate the federal in 1 year and the state over 5 years. So in the end, an investor who has just the right tax appetite can offset 80% of the cost through tax relief and depreciation. But those investors are hard to find. They have to have a certain type of income and a certain kind of tax liability. And it's not just anyone who has money to spare. The tax law is rather specific. So for us to find those investors where our initial search didn't yield any, we're going to continue to do this because this is one of the deliverables that we had. I'm not promising anything, but we're going to come back with something, hopefully, because talking to Andy, a direct purchase doesn't look likely. I know the city of Fairfield did 3 projects: airport, library, and our street maintenance building. They weren't big projects. They were very similar to the payback here at the beach. And we used unbudgeted backfill. We did not include the backfill in our budget for that year. And then we got it. And so we invested that in solar. But this is basically the financial rundown, which is the way we look at it is this is an investment. We want you to get the best possible return. We're not going to sell you a project that doesn't give you a good return. And so of the 3, the beach is the most attractive. Second would be a battery alone project at Bridgeview Center. And the third was solar and battery at Bridgeview. But at this time, I don't have a PPA in hand to offer, but we're going to continue to work with that, and we'll work with Andy and bring that back to the city if we can find it.
Okay. Any specific questions, or do you want to wait until you get some?
Just have a couple of quick
Sure.
questions, Your Honor. And if memory serves me correctly, the solar array for the Bridgeview Center would be on the roof, correct?
Correct.
Would that be the same if we went to the beach also? It would be on the roof there as well?
The beach project, our design team put it on the indoor pool facility, which is close to the meter. You want to be relatively close to the meter that you're tying into. So every solar project has to be tied to a specific meter, and it has to be sized appropriately for that meter. And so Alliant doesn't let you, say, put 20 times more energy on a meter than you're going to use. They make you, essentially, you can offset up to 100% and no more. So we took the meter at the beach that had kind of the simplest, in a sense, that pays electricity in a very simple way. It's X amount per kilowatt hour per month. And in a sense, it pays more per kilowatt hour than the other meter. We found that one to be the best return on investment. But the short answer to your question was, yeah, the panels would be on the south-facing roof of the indoor pool facility. That's the area that we found would be unobstructive.
Okay. And would we have to redo the main junction boxes or the main circuit boxes inside those facilities to accommodate those?
Possibly. So what we did for Bridgeview, because it was a paid engineering study, is we came in and we did all that due diligence. We actually looked at the meter and worked with Alliant Energy and developed a plan for how we would actually tie it together. What we did for the beach was more of a broad view. If the city was interested, we'd have to come back and actually have our electrical crew, our master electrician, his journeyman, and his apprentice come on and do exactly what you're saying. Look at the electrical system, and then they'll actually make a plan for, does it need to be upgraded or not, and what would that cost? So the difference between this one from the beach and the other two would be, the other two are guaranteed prices. That's the price that we would actually be able to do if you want to move forward. This is just a kind of a broad view that we would want to come back and drill down. So this one requires a little bit more due diligence. I can work with Andy and get a price for what that might cost us to come out, and if you guys wanted to see what the beach project would look like,
Okay.
we can come out and do that.
Okay. And last question. You spoke about the battery banks. How much space does, for example, the Bridgeview Center, how much space does that physically require to put those battery banks in?
It might be about 4 feet by 4 feet by 5 or 6 feet tall.
Oh, so it's not a large.
It's not huge, no.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
I've got it.
Holly?
I was wondering, since it sounded like hasn't been interest from investors so far, if there's other locations with city properties that might be appealing to investigate to kind of up the interest. Like, I know, thinking of big energy users, the water pollution control facility or places like that, would look investigating some of those, you think, up our appeal if we wanted to investigate that route?
Yeah, it's worth exploring. It's actually the large energy users that sometimes aren't the best investments.
Okay.
So that's what we found with Bridgeview. It's a relationship between how much power you use, how you pay for that power, and how much space you have available for solar. So in simple terms, a facility that didn't use a lot of power and had a lot of space for solar is usually, that's pretty good. You can install as much solar as you need. Alternative would be, imagine like a high-rise building. It has a lot of energy use, a tiny roof that's probably filled with HVAC system. So there's just no room to install solar. We found that with the Bridgeview Center, there were actually a lot of areas on the roof that were no-go areas, either because the structural engineer, BSP engineering said we don't have, there's not sufficient structure support to handle the weight of the solar, or we found the big portion that's directly over the main exhibition center that they hang equipment from the inside. And so that's a no-go area. So there's quite a bit of area that we said potentially in a different facility could have used, but weren't able to. So that relationship between how much space there is for solar and how much energy is used is a big part of it. The facilities that typically work best are the kind of the medium to small energy users, which is why the city did the airport, doesn't use a lot of electricity, the library, maintenance shed building. It could be worth exploring some of those. As you can see, the payback for the beach, which is a smaller energy user, was better. And so, again, as a company, we don't try to sell big projects. We try to sell projects that make financial sense. And so it's a simple matter of Andy getting a signature on a release form to Alliant that we could run some other numbers for some other facilities if you're curious.
Yeah, just, if it's not a big cost for researching it, maybe, at least getting some baseline on some other ones might be.
Yeah, I could actually work with Andy, just get some addresses to some different places, and it's usually pretty easy to tell which ones may be good for solar.
My other question was looking at, say, we wanted to move forward, which obviously, we're way too early, but say we wanted to move forward, what's a timeline look for a project like this?
I'd say from the time you sign on, it could be installed within 3 to 6 months, depending on a lot of different factors. But yeah, usually I'd say within 6 months.
Okay. Because thinking, I know there's been conversations in the legislature to, continue to make changes. So, just thinking timeline while we're not in session.
Yeah.
If we're thinking that way, so maybe something we want to think about sooner than later.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about. There was some legislation at the state level pushed by Mid-American Energy to bill solar customers a different monthly fee than non-solar customers. At this point, that's illegal. It's considered discrimination. They were pushing to change that law. There were a number of Republican congressmen, I believe, who pushed back and said, well, let's do a study to assess what's the value of solar to the utility provider. A similar study done in Minnesota showed there was actually a financial benefit to utility companies to have what's called distributed generation, which is energy being produced away from their power plants. The most expensive energy they produce is usually in the summer during hot days when everyone's got their air conditioning on. And it costs them a lot of money to send that electricity to those locations. When there's solar, and typically the same days that are their highest energy uses are the days the sun is shining, is being produced, and it's feeding not just the facility, but going to any buildings in the area, that actually saves them money and saves them a lot of transmission cost. So if that study were done, I think that it would be very eye-opening for the Irish legislator to say, well, there's really no reason that you would bill your solar customers more. But you're right, it's off the table for now, but next legislative session, you never know. So we also want to move with the investors this year because the tax credits are in full force in 2019 and they start stepping down in 2020. So this would be the most attractive to potential investors as a 2019 project. So we're working on it. It's just knock on wood that we can find somebody who would be interested in it. Again, I don't want to say needle in a haystack, but it's not a straightforward type situation, but we have a number of opportunities and we're going to exhaust the list to try to find you guys a PPA owner.
Well, I got one more. Sorry. Are other communities, do you see most other municipalities going one way or the other on purchasing themselves or doing the investors?
That's actually a good question. I asked Andy if he could ask his fellow city administrators in Iowa. He said most were choosing PPA over direct purchase.
Okay, thanks.
Which, yeah, it makes sense for cities because, the city of Fairfield with those projects, again, they were smaller projects that could be funded by this unexpected income. Most cities don't have a budget for solar projects. It's not something that's considered. Cities, just like when you're bonding, cities are considered very strong potential investors. You know that a city is going to exist long enough to pay back its loan. I mean, the city of Fairfield got a 40-year USDA grant for our wastewater. I don't think any individual or any business can probably get a 40-year loan. So, cities are solid in that way. And so we'll keep looking. And hopefully we can find some investor who'd be interested in these projects.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just to follow up on, Michael, you made mention of this during the presentation, and I appreciate this. And that's something that Councilwoman Berg stated as well. And that is there a relationship in terms of proximity? It seems to me there is. You may recall when we visited the beach summer of 18, as I recall. When we visited there, you and I were having discussions about the merits and demerits of whether or not it would be perhaps on the roof of the facilities. Mm. And the other one was ground mounts and some of the challenges you have there. The battery one's fairly easy to figure out, but I'm just curious from an industry perspective. Does it make any difference, or is there some sort of an approximate distance then? If you're going to be putting in solar panels, can you be, I'm picking a way off number, a quarter of a mile away from the facility?
Yes, you can. The project that Ideal installed last fall in Fairfield for the university was over half a mile from the place that it tied in. And so that was a series of bores under a highway and a lot of digging to get the conduit there. The further away you go, the thicker the wire has to be to transfer the electricity, and the wire then gets heated up, so you have to have larger conduit, et cetera, et cetera. So it's best to be close. The shorter distance is better price-wise. So, to answer your question another way, and I don't want to scare anybody, but, say the city said, oh, that soccer field over by the beach, we're just going to put a big solar field in there and then pipe the electricity across the street to Bridgeview. That's feasible. I mean, that's physically a possibility. Not anything the city would do. So, press, please don't quote me on that. I'm just spitballing here. But yes, you can do that. But when we looked at that and saw that people do play soccer there, thought, you know what? You don't want to create a situation where the city does something unpopular and takes away a green space just to put some solar on the ground. The benefit to the ground is you can get an optimal angle to the sun. And you get more energy per module than if you're on a roof with a less optimal angle. The benefit to the roof is it's just the roof that I don't think anyone will be upset if the roof has solar on it. It doesn't change the facility in any meaningful way. So that's why we went with the roof. And this system size maxes out what's available on that roof. So again, we've got your best interest in heart. We're trying to, again, come in with the best possible investment for you. And I hope to be able to send you some PPA options in the near future.
Mr. Mayor, just one last comment on it. First of all, Michael and his crew have been very, very helpful to staff, quite frankly, in asking all of my really pesky and stupid questions for him as it relates to solar. But I think it's somewhat, I wouldn't say blind out of the obvious, but the item that we have to satisfy then is probably something that's not entirely within our control, and that's the merits and demerits of whether or not we self-fund those, which involves CIP, or we seek and then obtain investors. And as you indicated, that field is probably not as plentiful as it once was, and as Councilwoman Berg pointed out, perhaps some of those credits will be going away. That seems to me, and I can stand corrected, but that seems to me our biggest challenge, is which mechanism we would use to finance this project.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll continue to do our due diligence and do that, because that was part of what you paid us for, was to look into that. So we're going to continue to do that. But I would say if an investor would come, it would be this year, over next year or the following year. But you never know, module prices could drop, and more and more businesses and investor groups are showing interest in this. They're seeing that this can be a real solid investment. It's protected investment in many ways because it's not tied to the stock market.
Right.
So you're not going with those ups and downs. And historically, utility rates have done one thing over time, and that's they go up. They don't go down. They very rarely stay where they are. They go up. And so when you buy an energy system and the cost of electricity from that system is set, it's a solid rate, you paid for it, and utility rates go up, it's one of the few investments where your savings grow over time. Your savings in year 25 are much higher than they were in year 1 because utility rates have gone up. So the electricity you're not paying for is more expensive. So it's getting a lot of attention. There's more interest in this kind of stuff, I think, than before. It's just that this exact scenario may not be attractive to an investor just because of some of the reasons we talked about, the way the energy is used, the way it's paid for, the space that's available for solar, et cetera.
Okay, well, it's very informative, and we'll look forward to more information from you, and I'm sure Andy will then share that with council so they can get up to speed on what's best for the city. So thank you very much, Michael. We appreciate it. Item E in our agenda allows citizens to comment on any item on the agenda. Is there anybody that has given a card or wants to speak to an item on the agenda? Don't see any. Okay, let's go to item G then.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the sale of city-owned property described as Lot 28 and Block 4, Janey's addition to the city of Ottumwa, Wapello County, Iowa, commonly known as 122 South Fellows.
Good evening, Kevin. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Brandy Krauschauer offered the city $250 for a vacant lot located at 122 South Fellows. Ms. Krauschauer wants to use the lot as additional yard space for her house next door, and she is willing to remove any dead trees or debris, down tree limbs and such from the vacant lot. The property will be transferred by quitclaim deed, buyer paying all costs of publishing public hearing notices and recording fees.
This is a public hearing. If there's anybody that wants to address this item, seeing none, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 126, 2019, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property described as Lot 28 and Block 4, Janey's addition to the city of Ottumwa, Wapello County, Iowa, commonly known as 122 South Fellows, to Brandy Krauschauer for the amount of $250. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 126, 2019.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented, Your Honor.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the sale of city-owned property located at 912 North Ash.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sealed bids for this placarded house were accepted until 2 p.m., May 22nd, 2019. 2 bids were received. KBC Investments LLC submitted the best bid, and staff recommends the city accept this bid. Bid tab was attached to your notes for the sum $4,600.
This also is a public hearing. If there's anyone that wants to address this particular item, seeing none, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 127, 2019, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property located at 912 North Ash to KBC Investments LLC for the sum of $4,600. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 127, 2019.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Good, Kevin.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the sale of city-owned property described as lots 51, 52, 53, and the west one-half of lot 54 and block 4, all in Manning's first addition to the city of Ottumwa, Wapello County, Iowa, commonly known as 1726, 1732, 1736, and 1744 Mabel.
Kevin, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lorenzo Silva and Sebastian Silva Zuniga offered the city $1,250 for 4 vacant lots located at this location in Maple Street. The buyer wishes to construct a mechanic workshop on these properties. The property is zoned I-1, of course, is appropriate for such a use. The buyer will sign development agreement as part of the sale, agreeing to construct the workshop within a 3-year period, as well as some other agreements, such as if there will be some assignment of the property or some conveyance of the property. The city would have some first rights on that level. Property would not be able to be sold or conveyed for any kind of conditional use permit, for instance. So there's a couple of conditions like that I'm sure members saw in their notes, but we would recommend acceptance of this bid for this project.
This also is a public hearing. If there's anyone that wants to address this particular item. Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Skip.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 128, 2019, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property described as lots 51, 52, 53, and the west one half of lot 54, block 4, all in Manning's first addition to the city of Ottumwa, Wapello County, Iowa, commonly known as 1726, 1732, 1736, and 1744 Mabel to Lorenzo Silva and Sebastian Silva Zuniga for the sum of $1,250. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 128, 2019.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Resolution number 124, 2019, approving the city's establishment of a park and recreation foundation. Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 124, 2019.
Good evening, Gene. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Ottumwa Parks Advisory Board is recommending that the city establish a foundation similar to that established for the support of the city's public library. This foundation will be in a position to apply for grants that are currently not available to the city. This foundation will be a nonprofit entity that is tax exempt under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. The first step is obtaining nonprofit corporation status under Iowa Code Chapter 504. Attached hereto is a copy of the proposed articles of incorporation and a rough draft of the proposed bylaws. The city attorney will file the articles of incorporation with the Iowa Secretary of State and then establish the board of directors of the foundation, which would review and approve the bylaws. Once that is completed, the city attorney will file the application for tax exempt status. This is a lengthy process and requires a $600 filing fee for the IRS application and at least the sum of $20 for the Secretary of State filing fee. This resolution also authorizes the city attorney to pay the accompanying costs for the application process. In the event the services of a CPA are required for the IRS application process, the city attorney could obtain that assistance as needed.
Any questions for Gene?
Mr. Mayor, just wanted to back clean up on this. This was an item we talked about, as you may recall, at the staff meeting this morning. Just to clarify, having worked in some cities before that had foundations, and again, Gene, I'll ask not to put you on the spot, but this foundation, I like the idea behind it insofar as that I've seen a number of foundations that are in smaller towns, and they're usually under the auspices of a larger entity, and that may have some advantages legally. But I think just from a pure standpoint of them dispersing funds to capitalize projects, as we're talking about everything from cash investments and other financing tools. We talked a little bit about that. But just to be clear on that, this would be, it's really its own separate standalone foundation if we're able to get this off the ground. It sounds like it will, and then they could confer monies for improvements specific to the parks. That's all I had. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Recommendation pass and adopt resolution number 124, 2019.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Gene or Randy? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you, Gene. I think that's a good move and long-term best interest for our park system.
Resolution number 131, 2019, approving the agreement between the City of Ottumwa and Calhoun Burns and Associates Incorporated for professional engineering services to conduct the 2019 and 2020 biennial bridge inspections and load rating. Recommendation: pass and adopt resolution number 131, 2019.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented, Your Honor.
Second.
Good evening. Tonight we have City Engineer Dwight Dolman to make this presentation. Nice to have you with us, Dwight.
Thank you, Mayor. This is part of the biannual bridge inspection program. The scope of the work includes routine inspection of 21 bridges within the city of Ottumwa, updates of the load rating calculations if necessary, and updates of the scour evaluation if necessary. All work will be in accordance with the Iowa Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration guidelines and requirements. The time to complete the inspection should not exceed 6 months. Compensation is expected to cost around $42,450. The Iowa Department of Transportation requires that all bridges be inspected every 2 years. These requirements must be met to remain in compliance with IDOT inspection program and qualify for highway bridge program funding.
Any questions for Dwight? Okay. Nice to know that we're being reviewed regularly, so those are safe and repaired as needed. There's no further questions. Take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Byrd?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dwight. Move to item J. If there's anyone in the audience that wants to speak to an item not on the agenda, this is the time to step forward. Seeing none, okay. Item K, the communications and information from council and city staff. First of all, I'd like to, is there any questions from anybody on the council? Okay. I'd like to thank Larry Seals for the work he did with the DNR to get our water pollution control facility certified, and we're going to be in good operating standards here pretty quickly, and that was a cost savings to the city, which I think we should appreciate the hard work that he and Phil Bergmeyer and I think John Hall worked together on to get that taken care of. Secondly, I'd give Public Works a pat in the back. I heard from several people the work they did to help the folks down in Eldon during the flooding. We supplied sandbags and some leadership, and I think, again, that could have been a real touchy situation, so appreciate their work on that. I'd be interested if any of the council want to comment. We did have we had a staff meeting to talk with our school representatives about the SROs, and we're still in negotiation and discussion. Nothing's been decided. Staff are going to bring some recommendations, and it'll ultimately be a council decision, but we had some very frank and open discussion. I think it was helpful for our staff to have that. I've had a couple of requests from motorcyclists to remind the public that when you're mowing grass, please mow the outside line of your property to blow into the yard, not out into the street. And there are two reasons for that. One is that it obviously plugs up our sewers, but the motorcyclists tell me that riding over grass is worse than sand and very slippery and causes lots of motorcycle accidents. So if we can ask our homeowners to blow the grass into the yard, not out of the street, we'd really appreciate that. At some point, and I think this is maybe just informational tonight, we'd like to get together with Bob and Edward and have some update on where we're at with our IT plans and report for our citywide IT department, and give us an idea how things are going, because that continues to be an item that shows up in a lot of professional journals and continuing education meetings about cybersecurity and how we're poised to deal with all that stuff. So I think it'd be helpful to hear directly from Edward. And lastly, I'd like to compliment the Chamber, Shay Griner, for a great Major League Eating contest on Saturday. I think the fact that Joey Chestnut won the contest with 28 and a half canteens is unbelievable, but it was a great day, and I think people had fun and had a lot of good compliments about the downtown and the upstairs downtown apartment showing. So thanks to everybody that participated in that. Last call, is there anything that you want to bring up or for future reference? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Berg?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
I have 6:15.